Hi, I'm Valerie Englehart, and in this video I am going to be painting a lionfish on a colorful watercolor wash background. And the reference image I'm going to be using is one that I took at the Seattle Aquarium back in like 2019, back when there were lionfish at the aquarium. I don't remember seeing them on my most recent trip a few months ago. So, first step, I have some rough paper. It's about 14 inches by 20 inches. I spritzed it with water because it helps the pigment flow a bit more. And in that upper left corner, I started with some Paliba Diamond Blue, and in the upper right corner, some Magic Wizard. These colors are by Rockwell Canada, part of the Magic collection, I believe it is. And I really love how these colors granulate, and when the pigment disperses, you get multiple colors. For example, that golden Magic Wizard color separates into like some bright yellow and pink undertones, and it's one of my favorite colors. So the goal for this is I'm going to be covering this entire piece of paper with color. I want every corner to be interesting. I've turned my paper upside down to let that water flow backwards, and I am adding, I think this one is Alexandria purple. It's one of the cooler purples in the collection. Plopping in some more of that Paliba Diamond Blue because I do want this painting to be cohesive. I don't want it to just be a block of one color, then a block of another. So I will be letting these colors merge and mingle to give a sense that there is cohesion, that they all belong together. I did sprinkle on some salt because I love salt texture, and now I'm splattering on some granulation fluid just to see what effects I get. Down, or I guess up, it will eventually be down, but that is a much warmer purple. I think it's, I don't remember any of their names. I just know what they are on my palette and when I grab them. I think it's royal purple, but it's the warm purple in the collection. I've turned my paper back the right side, and now I'm just dropping in a much thicker mixture of that Magic Wizard, kind of in the area where I am planning to put my lionfish. But real quick, look at that texture that we're already getting just from water up in that upper left corner, or right corner rather. But I'm going to cover things in this cling wrap, saran wrap, kitchen plastic, and I reuse it because using plastic isn't the most environmentally friendly, so I do try to reuse that kind of material. Spreading a lot more salt on, and when you use cling film, you can play with that texture for as long as you really want until you're happy because it keeps that paint wet, but it does mean you need to let things naturally dry. And now that it's naturally dried, you can see I have a ton of beautiful salt patterns. I have striking cling film texture, which is going to help me in creating like where those little spines are going to be on the sides of the lionfish. But right now, I want this lionfish to pop away from the background and almost glow. So I'm going in, I'm using whatever the local color is. And by that I mean whatever color is in the area. Right now it's that warm purple. So I'm grabbing the warm purple from my palette and I'm just eyeballing where the bottom of the mouth is. So I'm not using any sketch for many reasons, but the reason that this works for me is it allows me to place the lionfish where I think it's the most interesting on the canvas. Like, I had an idea of where I want it to go, but now that I have all of my marks in, I can really analyze and see where it makes the most sense for it to naturally be. And one of the reasons I love having such a textured background is it lets me use those marks as measurement. If I just have a white piece of paper, it's a little more difficult for me to measure things out without a sketch. But with an explosion of texture and color, I can kind of go, okay, a little spiny do should be here. And if I go over 2 more blossom marks, I should put another paint mark here. Now I'm being very deliberate with my brush strokes. I am painting negatively, so I'm painting around the lionfish by making a mark and then bleeding and softening it. And because I don't at this point want a bunch of hard lines. I have sped the video up to about 200%. And so even with the video sped up, it's still quite a process. I am taking my time with this. And I'd encourage you to do the same. Enjoy the process. Take your time. And especially at this stage of the painting, it's okay if things dry a little faster because I'm really just painting in a bunch of little shapes to give form to this lionfish. Whereas when I'm working on the wash, I do have a lot of paper to cover and do need to be mindful of those drying times. But again, working in a local color, so now that I'm in that upper right portion, I am using the Palaiba Diamond Blue because that is the color in that area. And I do keep to a limited palette for this, just the 4 colors. And then I do come in with some gouache at the end. So 4 tubes of watercolor and 1 tube of white gouache. And I find that working with a limited palette, back to that word cohesive, it is also for my sake in that if I start trying to juggle a bunch of colors, I start to get confused and I start to make a mess. It's much easier for me to focus with just a few colors, and then I can really put my focus on the values to give shape and form to my subject, instead of worrying what color to pick up next. And when I paint, I do notice that I like to have at least something that is yellow in tone, just because it does brighten up an area, really can draw attention and give life. And I've also noticed I have a liking of blues, particularly this Palaiba Diamond Blue. It is probably one of my favorite colors along with that Magic Wizard. I use them all the time. I love them so much, and they mix together really beautifully. If you look on the right side of the lionfish where those spiny fins are coming out the side, you can see the ghost of them, and that's how I paint, where this pass is going to be mapping out where things are, but if I don't end up liking them, I can easily reshape things. So right now I've got the ghost of that area of the subject. And to bring a little more interest on the left side of that spiny fin, which is going to be coming out quite a bit, I am using that cooler purple, but dropping in some of the blue just to give more visual interest. Just because the local color is purple doesn't mean you can't drop in another color, make it more interesting. Just make sure it's a color that is already in your composition. And speaking of having to reshape things, originally I had some of those spines a bit shorter up in that corner, and then I realized, ooh, I want those to extend a bit further. So I go in with a darker value and extend it, creating the illusion that those little spiny fins actually extend all the way to the corner. And if you want to go see this painting in real life and are in the Seattle area, it is currently being shown at the Seattle Convention Center as part of the Northwest Watercolor Society Signature Members Show. And that is going to be on display until, I believe, July 5th. So if you happen to be in the Seattle area and want to go check this out, head over to the Convention Center. And also, not to plug anything, but if you really like green tea and matcha desserts and matcha delicacies, and just, there is a lovely cafe nearby. So you can go look at art and then go get like a yummy parfait or something. Now look at this painting right now. Doesn't it look really silly and weird? So I'm just putting in the stripes. You can see my reference image that I'm holding down on the lower left side, and take a look at that photo really quickly. It is like a bluish purple, all of it, because I took this picture at the aquarium. And so I can't really see the colors of this lionfish, which is perfect because it means I can just focus on values and use whatever colors I want. And that's a fun thing about being an artist, is I don't have to make this look like the photo. I don't even have to make this look realistic. This could be a pink lionfish, but as long as I get the values right and get the shape right, it will still read as a lionfish. But back to it, doesn't that face look absolutely ridiculous? So in a lot of paintings, you're gonna go through a ridiculous phase where you're painting and you're like, oh man, what am I doing? This isn't turning out right. Why am I even, do I stop? Just keep going. It's okay. If you have to, put your brush down, leave the room. If you've made a really strong mark that you're unsure of, bleed that mark away. You can add that mark back in later. But it is far better to give yourself some time away than to decide to throw a painting away too early. I will say that one of the bonuses of hating a painting and having the thought of throwing it away is if you don't actually throw it away, but then just go, F it, I'm going to do whatever I want. Sometimes those are the most creative, most fun, and sometimes most successful painting sessions because you learn so much. Because you've let go of any, I guess, hopes or like that tension of, oh, this has to be right because I'm painting it for a show or a commission or to submit to a gallery. And you can instead just be like, well, I'm throwing it away anyway. Let's see what I can make this into. I gotta say, I don't think I had that problem with this painting. I had a pretty clear idea of where I wanted to go, how this was going to turn out, and I've painted enough that I'm pretty good at trusting the process. I know that it goes through its awkward, kind of ugly phase. Just don't discount your painting too early. Don't judge it until it's done. So one thing I noticed about this lionfish as I was painting it is that gold was extending very far out from where the body actually would be. It was making my lionfish look very, very well fed, little chonky. So to reshape it, I've added more of that blue to create the edge of the lionfish and then bled it away into the background so it looks like it's the water. So that's an easy way to correct a shape, is to just go in with either the local color in that area or something darker and then bleed it away. Doing the same thing on the underside, but because that area is purple, I'm using my purple color. And one thing I like to do is drag some of the outside color into my subject. So I just pulled some of that Palaiba Diamond Blue, and now I'm pulling in some of that dark purple into the subject. That way it's not so cut out. It phases it in and out. After all, this lionfish is in the water, not sitting on top of it. And I know we're pretty far into this video at this point, but I do apologize for the lighting in it. This video was actually recorded quite a while ago, before I started my YouTube channel, and I was still really new at recording a process. So unfortunately, it is a little washed out. I did try to color correct it as much as I could, but obviously I could only do so much. But the techniques are really what matters in this case, and well, those are obviously shown. So I'm pulling out away from the body to do the tail area. And I've just made some marks and then bleed them away. The usual, put down a strong color and then clean my brush, have some clean water, and then just move that pigment so it creates a nice dark to light transition. I found that I didn't put the tail out far enough. No big deal. Dark marks further out, bleed that color back in, and it's like there was never a mistake to begin with. Only you and I know because, well, here it is on video. That's okay, it can be our secret. I will admit, I struggled with these stripes, and the reasoning is that I am not a very detailed painter. I am incredibly impatient, and my brain and my eyes start to go fuzzy when there are too many details. And so when there are a bunch of like little lines that I would have to paint in, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna give the impression of one and people will know it's a lionfish. So if you too have the trouble of, oh, I don't want to paint that, there are too many little details and lines, just give the impression of them. Let your audience know that you know that there are stripes there, but that you don't need to get them exact or perfect. Now, because this lionfish is the subject of my painting, and this face area is my focal point. I am going to have the greatest amount of contrast here. So that is where some of the lightest part of my painting is, but also going to be some of the darkest, because that contrast of light to dark in that severity really draws the eye. And that's why I went back into my lionfish's face to add some more dark marks, because I want to call attention there. Now I have all of that beautiful texture on the lower left part of my painting, and I do want to accentuate that a little bit. The area, while lovely, is looking a bit bare, and I want to provide a little more of the environment for this lionfish to be in. And in my photo, it's an aquarium, so there's like mock coral reef and things. But again, I'm not really a detail painter, and too many little lines and textures does begin to make me go crazy. So I'm just trying to follow the texture that I already see in the wash with those salt patterns and painting around them to accentuate them, because it does kind of look like some of the coral that I saw in my reference photograph. And the part in the foreground, I use that much stronger purple, but as we get away from the foreground, I start to make the color more diluted, and the brushwork isn't as fluffy. Also, I want things to be more detailed, closer to my subject, whereas I don't want it to be so detailed toward the edge or the lower corners of my paper, just because I don't want to create a distraction. All right, I let all of that dry, and now I'm going in and adding in some highlights with some gouache. So I just got a size 2 rigger and gouache fresh from the tube. I find it works much better than trying to reconstitute dried gouache, because then by adding in that extra water, it's a little more transparent, and I really want this gouache to pop. Also, if you're going to use gouache as a highlight, it does work best if it's on a dark or high value, low value, dark. I'll just stick with dark, or saturated. Saturated works too, because obviously like white on white, you're really not going to see things, but white on brown, that is a dark brown, oh yeah, you'll see things a bit more. And so I'm using the gouache, and you don't want to go too crazy with it, but I do want to bring some things forward, just because especially on my lionfish, that is a lot of that brown. So just a little bit of white to break things up. Also, as I've stated, aquarium, there were lights, and so little bits of the fish were reflecting. And I even added a few marks to show some of the little like spiny bits that are on that lower back side. And then some of the stripes on the lionfish were white. And so I am adding a few of those in and accentuating those left spines, because that white really does help pop them away from that purple background. I don't paint a lot of fish, but this one has been really fun for me to do. So if you have any, I like painting animals in general, so if there are any animals that you would like to see me paint, put that suggestion down in the comments. I love getting suggestions on new things that I should try painting. Usually gouache is the last thing I do, but I was noticing that those spines on the left side needed a little more pop, so I went in with a bit more Magic Wizard to bring more attention to those. Now the reason I try not to try not to add more paint after the gouache is on is a twofold. One is I try not to, there's often a problem where when you do a painting, it's like, oh, I should have stopped like 20 minutes ago. And so the adding of the gouache to me signifies I'm done. The other reason is that because it's gouache, it is water soluble. If I go in with watercolor and it rubs against the gouache will run into the watercolor, and it affects the paint. It makes it a little more like opaque, a little more murky, and I just don't like that very much. But sometimes you just got to go back in, and in this case, I had to, and it was the right choice to make. Throwing on some more gouache on those spines because I really want to bring them out from merging in with the background. The ones on the other side, those ones can merge, but because these ones are so far extended, I do want them to be more accentuated. And here's the finished painting. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you like this video, press that like button so I know to make more like it. And if you want to see more, subscribe because I produce videos every Monday and Thursday. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.